Hey, family, Christine Dimmick is a powerhouse to me. And whether you agree with her or not on her ideas, there's no questioning that her information shares are incredible. I'm so happy I get to talk with her today with you. Christine is the founder of the Good Home Company, and she has her own podcast, actually. Her podcast is called Be the Change, and her book is Detox Your Home. She's going to talk about a lot of that and more. So let's get ready to enjoy Christine Dimmick. Christine, we're so excited about you being here today. Welcome to the family.
I am absolutely honored to be here and to speak with everyone today. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, wow. Listen, it is so exciting. I mean, my goodness, I was sharing that not only are you the CEO of Good Hope Company, but you've also written a book about detoxing your home, and you have a podcast on Apple, Be the Change. There's so much for us to get into here. But before we do all of that, I want to know a little bit about Christine, how she evolved to that point. Who was little Christine?
Oh, that's interesting. Interesting question. We're going to get right to the heart of it. So I am the founder and CEO of the Good Home Company, as you mentioned, and that was started in my kitchen over 25 years ago. I am the granddaughter of a farmer in Bowling Green, Ohio, and my family's actually 4 generations of farmers. And I live in New York City. I'm a city girl. I'm still here. And the Good Home Company came about of my appreciation and my love of my grandparents. I come from a single mom, and she, raised me, and we traveled all around the country for her work so she could advance in her career. But home was the grandparents' farm. And so Good Home Company was born around that. It's a natural cleaning products company that, around that time, I mean, I'm sure everyone's familiar with it now, with Mrs. Myers and, some other competitors. And in fact, I was the first to do it in my kitchen. And that's a whole story. And JBH, I thought that was my story, right? Like, I thought that was it. And then about 7.5 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I was one of those people, I went to SoulCycle, ate organic. I had a healthy lifestyle. And I said, what's going on? And at the time I was in my mid 40s, and I knew it was too soon for me. I shouldn't be having cancer. It shouldn't be the case. And of course, I had several friends also in their mid 40s who weren't so lucky and who ended up passing away from it. So then Detox Your Home was kind of my deep dive into the toxins that we're exposed to on this planet, and why so many people end up having autoimmune disorders, cancers, and why it's gone from 1 in 5 will get cancer to now 1 in 2. And then the podcast is, to get up to the podcast, that was, the book was great, an amazing experience. I've spoken at the UN in Geneva. I've spoken in New York. I've spoken at my son's school. I was really spreading that word. And then I found that I met so many incredible people who are actually doing wonderful things to change this world to where we would like it to be. And they didn't have a platform. Everyone's focused on the famous, and I wanted to give them a voice. So that's where the podcast came from.
I know you've had some incredible guests, and never would I ask you who your favorites were, but I will ask you this. Early in the podcasting, what really stood out about your guests to you that they all had in common, beyond the generic, they were doing things to change the world?
Sure. They all had in common was trauma. Through our pain comes our greatness. And I've seen that time and time again in my life.
Hashtag, through our pain comes our greatness. Wow.
Yeah, it does. It does. And so they all went through trauma, and they all had a decision to make. My last guest, his name's Antonio Espinosa. He was a former retired corrections officer whose partner was murdered on the job, his best friend. And he came back, and he had that decision where he was going to orient his heart. And he chose hope. And so now he is working with those who are incarcerated. Instead of holding that anger, he's showing their art. He's giving them hope, a way for when they get out, to be recognized and to earn income. And that's what the show's about. So it's really like how you took your pain and turned it into change and help others.
Well, I know our family will be listening in on your podcast and probably going back to catch a lot of those that have already happened. When you talk about he chose hope, wow, what strength that takes on so many levels, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's with all of us, right? I mean, we're all walking with our own pains, our own traumas. I certainly 2 years ago at the beginning of this pandemic, I lost my mother to COVID. Time and again, I think, I say, it's like I thought my business was, that had its own trauma. I had a falling out with a partner who was also my mother's husband at the time. I've walked in my life as we all have. And I think that that's the most important thing. But we do have that time where we could go to anger or we could go to hope. And I know that when my mom passed, I'm not the only one to go through that. How was I going to handle that? And I knew it was coming. And so I took that time to be with her, JBH. That's what was important. I knew I had very little time and I made the most of it for her.
You talk about that time to be with her. I can tell you, Christine, that and you said, we really want to get to know each other on a deeper level, right? Yeah. I will tell you, when my husband transitioned just over a year ago from Alzheimer's, I had so many joys in my heart, even in the midst of that great grief. Joys that enumerate too much to go through here. But the thing that I do want to share with you is I had thought, because you talk about through our pain coming our greatness, some of our greatest joys can come through overcoming them as well. I had thought, wow, my life is over in so many ways, because Bernie and I were so connected, 40 years plus connected. And we defeated all those ideas of you can't be happy and, love doesn't have to hurt is the theme of our life together, right? And it didn't. It was joyful so much. But Christine, when we knew he was in full-fledged Alzheimer's dementia, I thought, wow, is this how it's going to be for him this long? Forget about me. We got lucky because he turned to a happy 2-year-old. And so there were occasions to laugh and have joy in that. But when he transitioned, I had to rethink. I had to, figure out what is grief going to be like for me. And I'm just so excited about the work you're doing, because whether it touches the point of grief or whether it is, anger or wherever, you're finding how people solution past that and get to things that not only heal them, but help us. What a gift. What a gift. Did you think it that way when you started your work, especially with the podcast? We're going to talk about the other stuff, but especially with the podcast.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm a Sagittarius, so it's like I seek knowledge. I want the truth. Like I've always been good at. I'm well aware of how precious my time is on this planet. I'm 52 years old right now, and if I'm lucky, I'll have another 25, right?
I was saying yesterday, Christine, to somebody, hey, look, I measure my life in terms of how many more summers I have. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Your thought.
Yeah. Well, I think, they say always live in the moment, but I'm also aware of that, and so each day is a gift. It really is. And anyone who's traveled, anyone who's faced death, who's faced their own mortality, as I did with cancer, and, and then also seeing, as you said, thank you for sharing that, seeing your beloved past, you become aware of that and how short our time is. And so I'm like, okay, so this is what I have left. And, on the onset, and I've got a lot I want to do, and I want to help people. And I think that's the other thing too, that everyone has in common on my show, is that they're helpers. So it's not that they're just doing this for themselves. It's by helping others that we heal. And I know this, and so focusing out and bringing these people on the show, it not only it's healing them, but we're all getting healing by listening and understanding. We're all in this together, right?
We really are, and COVID has taught us that dynamic.
Yeah,
which guides me actually to something I really want you to lean in on, and educate us on it, because you're doing a lot of work, and your book talks about detoxing your home. You're doing a lot of work around that. Can you just 101 us on that? A lot of us think we have clean homes. We're not silly. We know germs live underneath, but we think they're friendly germs to us. And we're taught that, you got to eat a little bit of dirt, and help us.
There is some truth to that. I mean, there is some truth to the fact that our food's so clean now, and that it's not, I grew up, what's for lunch? And my grandma would say, go in the backyard and go pick some spring onions for your grandpa, because he always had, we had a jar of onions and water for him at lunch, picking the corn off the stalks. So we do need a little bit of that dirt. But I think what I was shocked to find out, I did this, and I didn't go to, there's a lot of stuff going on with misinformation and all that. And I went directly to our government websites. You don't have to look much further than that. All of it's documented. There's papers there on what's causing what. And there's three things that I really focus on. One, you may be shocked to know, is that the most toxic part of our home is our air. And the air that we breathe there's many things going on in our home, whether we burn candles, we use, we all wash our clothes, we clean, and we may not open, if you're in Manhattan, like I am in New York City, you may not open your windows that much. And we need air circulation. So the quality of your air is extremely important. You can go on, it's easily found. There's one company I know, it's named Aware. I don't like to push companies, but it's a device that you plug into your wall, and it tells you the quality of your air at the moment. So
you're going to scare a lot of people.
Well, I don't want to scare people, but there's ways to immediately, the good news is that unlike the air on the outside, which is going to take a lot of legislation and a lot of phone calls and protesting, et cetera, right? This is something that you can easily fix. You can get a HEPA filter. And if some of them are expensive. I spent maybe $100 on mine, and it's in every single bedroom. Okay. And that does a huge difference in your air quality. You may see that you sleep better. You may say that your asthma is reduced. It is very important to have that in your home. And by switching to things such as, natural cleaning products, or using, like what our ancestors used, vinegar and regular soap to clean, cleaning, we have to rethink what clean is, and particularly when we had this COVID and with this pandemic, and people were using bleach like left, right, and center. And actually bleach isn't killing COVID, but you could use something like hydrogen peroxide, which does, and much gentler on the system. The second thing that I would address is plastics and the overuse of plastics. So what happens? So it's not so much the plastic itself, but it's the chemicals that it's made from. It's made from petroleum, which is in fact the natural source. It's oil, right? But it's processed into this product that we have that when we heat it, we drink out of it, we freeze in it, it leaches out these things that are called phthalates. And phthalates mess with your endocrine system. What's your endocrine system, you may ask, right? Not everyone knows this, but it is, it controls our weight. It controls our mood. It controls our fertility. So by all these products that the phthalates are in perfumes, they're in our body creams, they're in our bottled water, all of this, it's no coincidence that so many young women these days are having trouble conceiving. And men for that matter, the sperm count in men has dropped 50%. Yeah. So so it's heavy stuff, but I often go on and, and I speak with HR departments and try to lead it in a empowering way, because there are things that you can do. You can use less plastic. You don't have to drink out of bottled water. You can, if you want to buy your water, buy it and put it in glass. I can also tell you in the book, you would find that water, it doesn't come from a magical source. When you're buying it, you're buying the plastic bottle, right? That's not like some fairy didn't bless that water and make it contaminant free. It's actually probably coming from the same tap water that you're drinking out of. Poland Spring that comes from Maine. If you live in Maine, you're drinking that already out of your faucet. Yeah.
When I was growing up, all of our water came from the faucet or from pumps. I grew up in North Carolina. And years and years and years ago. And I remember going to Europe and being surprised that people actually bought water in bottles. And you're making me think of that. Now, if that dates me, so who cares? I'm living the life, right? I'm doing what you're trying to help all of us do, which is get old healthily. But when you talk about just the surprise of what's in your home, and you said, the good news is we can fix stuff. Let's talk about some of the fixes that you recommend to help us all live healthier, whether it's our air or whatever else you've discovered on helping us to detox.
Sure. Well, I see right behind you, you have a plant. I don't know if that's a real plant or not, and I hope it is, but plants are wonderful. We need to have more.
It's a real plant. It's an elephant plant. Beautiful,
beautiful. More plants in your home. They clean the air. They're natural air cleaners. And so I have tons of plants.
This little guy doesn't like you to overwater it though, because it's a succulent.
Yes, which is even better. So if you think to yourself like, wow, I can't, how am I going to manage a plant? I can't remember to water it. Get yourself, what did you call it? An elephant plant? Yeah, get an elephant plant, get the succulents. I have orchids in the house, which actually aren't that difficult. They bloom and then you just leave them alone, and water the leaves, and then they bloom again in a year. Big leaf plants. You want, I have aloe vera in my house. All that you want plants. As I mentioned before, you can get yourself a HEPA air filter. That's going to make a huge difference in your air, and that you're going to notice it right away.
Bedding.
Pardon?
What about bedding and the things we clean with?
Well, that's interesting. Bedding is now back when I was a kid, they didn't really check. They put flame retardants on everything and they put it on the bedding. But now most of the beds are made without these chemicals, because that was actually one of the most harmful places to find your chemicals. So that's the good news. I do have a down blanket. I sleep better with that, but you can also get hypoallergenic stuff. If you use foam, a lot of people sleep on foam now and they have the foam beds. Make sure it's Pure certified. That's PUR. It's called CertiPure, and make sure that the foam and that you're using is not doused in lots of chemicals, because that's a place, and you won't smell it. That's the thing, you bring it into your home and you don't necessarily smell it. Dry cleaning, like you want to make sure that you go to a dry cleaner when you go, that it's a process called wet cleaning, which is not using those harmful chemicals on your clothing. And if they do use that, make sure you air it out. If you have a little porch, or if you can, put it by the window, let it air out and immediately take it out of the plastic when you get home. For myself, for the water. Yeah, go ahead.
And I want to come back to your thought. I don't want to cut it off, but I'm really curious. So many folks who are doing so much at home now that used to be done outdoors or away from home, like kids playing. Can the little ones still play on the floor? I mean, I played on the floor. I played in the dirt. Right. I remember one of our favorite pastimes was sitting along the side of the street. Again, we grew up in the country, and dusting dirt all over us and standing up and shaking it, putting mom seals on and pretend we were wearing silk stockings with the ash from the dirt.
Oh, I like that. I too spend a lot of, I haven't done that. I too spent a lot of time outdoors, in Ohio. I mean, that's immediately where we went. I very little time indoors.
But can little ones play indoors on the floor anymore?
Yeah. No, it's an excellent question. Sure they can. Sure they can. But ask yourself what you're using on your floor. Excuse me, whatever you're putting on your floor, your children and your pets are rolling around in it. A lot of pets have dermatitis issues, the itching and scratching, and people think it's allergies, and it's actually the floor cleaner they're using. I don't use the Swiffers. I don't use that. I use what is actually quite popular in Japan and South Korea, which is a steam mop. And they have them now. I bought mine on QVC years ago. It's lasted me probably 15 years. You put water in and it steams it up really hot, and it has a pad and it cleans the floor. And that's it. And it's just hot steam, and it's perfect. You don't have to use harsh chemicals to clean, and you shouldn't. Also on the carpet, like the sprinkle of the carpet. Remember that, like the carpet fresh and all that. Don't use that because you don't get it all up, and your children and your pets are inhaling it.
You talk about pets, and there's somebody behind you. Who's that?
Okay, so I have two rescue Chihuahuas. I have Ringo and Ella. Yeah, and Ringo.
Is that Ringo Starr and Ella Fitzgerald?
Yes, Ringo Starr and Ella Fitzgerald. That's right. That's absolutely right. So they're hanging out. Yeah. So they're a lot of people think they're cats.
I couldn't tell honestly from here, but I know you got a lot of adorableness going on there. Is sleeping with pets okay?
I sleep with my pets. Absolutely. I think so. Yeah.
I think pets have been very healing for people over COVID, especially. I mean, historically, we've all coexisted, right? But I think, and more frequently with pets lately, but I think there's a lot of calming and a lot of fun that can feed to how we're healthy as well when we interact with pets. How do we make sure that we are good pet owners?
Well, you also would think about when you bathe your pet, look at what you're putting on them, and listen, Lyme disease is very rampant here on the East Coast, and I know you want to protect them from the fleas and ticks, and so we put it's a pesticide that we actually put on our dogs. I don't put that on my dogs in the city, and you don't have to, so you want to just like as a human, like if you're going into the forest and you're going to go on a hike, you may want to spray yourself with something that's powerful, that's going to keep off the bugs, but you're not going to put that on yourself every day, because it just doesn't make any sense. I use a gentle soap. I use an olive oil soap when I bathe my dogs. Very, very simple. All their food's made for them. Fresh water, just like I have. I think one of the things, we're talking about drinking the tap water, and it's so important. You do have to look. We are looking at Flint, Michigan, and there's an example of where you thought the water was safe and it wasn't. What happened in Flint, and which is still happening in Flint, which is a whole other podcast. But the pipes were old, and the pipes had lead in them, right? So the chemicals that were being used, and when they switched it over, leached that even more. So there's simple tests that you can do at home to make sure. Like if you don't know, if you're in an apartment like me and you don't know if your pipes are safe or not, you can go to Home Depot and you get these they're like swabs, and you put it in, and it's a quick test. And I recommend everyone do that. I just happen to know. And, I wrote the book, I tested my own water. So I know, and my tap water was better than what came out of the bottled water from the drugstore. Yeah.
Well, when I was growing up, I think they said that a lot of the kids' good dental condition was because of the water they drank, which was tap water. Do we still get that, or was that not true?
Well, that's interesting. I think you're talking about fluoride there. And so fluoride was discovered. When it was discovered, it was in a river, and they found that the town, I believe it was Colorado, and they found that the people there didn't have tooth decay. And they checked the water, and they found, fluoride. And so people started using, we started adding it to our water, et cetera. But now we've used too much of it, you see, because it's in the water. But when we introduced it, we didn't have the whitening strips with added fluoride or the mouthwash with added fluoride, right? It's in our toothpaste, it's in everything. So one point it was beneficial, but now it's detrimental. So I believe it was under, and you may know this, under President Obama, it was federally lowered. They lowered the level of acceptable fluoride because it was too high.
When we think about your podcast and people helping to heal the world, when we think about your book, Detox Your Home, your company, the Good Home Company, wow, what a great name. It feels good, to hear it. What's the biggest message you want us to get from how you're tying all of that together?
Tying all of it together. Now here you go. I should have had that. Like, it's like my elevator pitch, right? The biggest message is that we are the change. I think that from Good Home,
become the change you wish to see.
Exactly. There is no, there certainly isn't they say a knight in shining armor, it's definitely not going to be, that who's going to save us. It's going to be each one of us. And that's what I found through all the efforts and all the climate change and everything, that it's going to take each and every one of us to come together. And, fortunately or unfortunately, I know people are tired and people want to, we all have our things that we do, but we're going to have to bring that into community, and it's overwhelming. So the one thing that I think is, start small. Start in your own home, start in your own good home. And when I started Good Home, that name, I wanted it to encompass anywhere, because, you could have a beautiful, huge, maybe a huge mansion in Montecito, and, or you could have, a studio apartment on the Lower East Side, or, wherever. A good home is, it's what you put in it, It's not the material item, but it's what you're building in the home.
Home is where the heart is, didn't they? Yeah. And we could be speaking of that from so many levels, including a healthy heart. So I really appreciate that. Can we go 4 for 4 now? So I'm going to ask you 4 questions.
Oh,
and
no.
To each question, you're going to give me 4 answers.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm just so incredibly excited to hear what your 4 answers are going to be. And we're going to start with dinner, okay? We're talking about what you put in yourself as well as you put on, as well as what you put on or around yourself in our conversation. Let's move over now and let's think. Christine, you get the opportunity to invite any 4 people you want to dinner from any time in history till now. Who's going to be at your table and why?
4 people. One is Albert Einstein. Okay.
Why?
Yeah. Why? I want him because I would like for him to explain E equals MC squared to me. Because I want him to explain energy to me, because I'm very much into energy, and that what we put out and all of it. And I believe in collective energy. That I think that what happens in the world, that you can tie that to what everyone is feeling at the time, and it comes before and not after. So I would like to have that explanation.
Well, music kind of suggests that to some degree, doesn't it?
Yeah,
we all like concert. We listen solo at home, but we all like concert as well.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, and that's putting it into sound, as is that calm we get from the water, right? When we're by water. So, So I would love to have him there. 2, I would like to have anyone. It would be my mom. I miss her, so I would like to have her at the table. Okay. To see her and to talk with her again. 3. Okay. So I'm going to bring it to now. Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote the Masterpiece Cast, is an incredible book that changed my life, and spoke to me in a way that I just kind of explained the system. And I would love to sit with her at dinner. Dr. Lynn Margolis was instrumental in looking at how we've developed as human, as a species, and where we came from. And it was her book. She was actually married to Carl Sagan, and she didn't get a lot of the attention that I think she should have. Yeah. So I think that I would like to sit with her and to be able to go over her work and to learn more. It's not just great conversation, but it's, I guess the key here of what I'm realizing of all the 4 that I picked is the learning, JBH. Like, I want to learn, you know? I would also love it if I could have 5 and if you could be there as well, because I would love to learn how
Einstein and your mom there.
Yeah,
I'll come.
Okay.
I'll come. I'll help you prep. I'll help you prep.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. I think I need like 20. I mean, I'd also like, just for humor, I'd throw in Keith Richards, because I think he's kind of like,
right? So Keith could play for Ella and Ringo.
Right. I mean, I saw his documentary, and you know what? His secret, like, my husband and I were laughing. We're looking at him. You know, I mean, Keith Richards, we all know if you don't, I mean, we all know what Keith Richards has done to his body or what, but he laughs in the documentary. He laughs like no one laughs. He's just constantly laughing. And I said, that's it. He just loves life.
Yeah. Because the spirit is part of the health process, and spirit needs some detoxing sometimes too.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go 2 for 4. I'm glad you made it through 1 for 4.
Thank you.
Guess what? 2 for 4, Keith Richards. You tell us what 4 areas of music, or what 4 pieces of music, what are you listening to and why?
Oh, okay. So now you're going to really date me. So one, I'll tell you who I've recently listened to. So one was Arrested Development. So that's I'm a kid from the 80s, right? I'm Gen Xer, and I recently went back to their it's not their debut album, but it's the one they won a Grammy for. And I've had the opportunity, not yet to speak with him, but with the leader's speech. And the lyrics are they're so powerful. And they're so, I mean, and it's also a reminder, like, JBH, I mean, like, how far back are the 80s when I was, 18 or whatever, but, it's just like the words, the struggles, is quite clear that people have been, we're talking about this for a long time, the change that needs to happen. So that's 1. 2, I just recently watched the Janet Jackson documentary, and I'm all about Janet right now. So I'm like going back into all her, it just as a reminder, it's like, I spend so much time listening to podcasts. I think
it got delivered in more than one piece, didn't it? Like,
it did. Did you watch it?
I did not watch it, but my sister said, you gotta TiVo it. You gotta go back and see it.
Yeah, it's on demand now.
I get weekends to watch stuff.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It was just really, wow. Like, and there's
what
someone.
What did we learn new though? The Jacksons have had such an open life and so well visited life. What did Janet tell you? Was there anything new, or was it just affirming truths you'd seen?
Well, I mean, maybe, also too, when it was back in the day, right? In my day, that she was big, top 40 radio, number 1 all the time. But what I didn't realize, the biggest takeaway I took away, 1 is her marriages, right? That we all knew she was in bad marriages, but what that was like for her, how strong she is. Incredibly just strong. And then what the Grammys and what she went through. And I think we're seeing that now with what they did to Whoopi when they, her, and again, I don't want to get political, but it's hard for me not to, but, Whoopi made a genuine mistake, right? I mean, this is someone who had thought in it and gave an apology, but still people, suspended her for 2 weeks. And Janet was not, I didn't even realize this, Justin Timberlake got to go to the Grammys and Janet was not invited. In fact, she was banned from the Grammys for that whole Super Bowl incident. Do you remember?
Where do you see that? Do you see that as
she talks about
she
it?
Was the owner of the era, or do you see that because of gender or race? How do you see it? You said you were shocked at it. How do you see that? What was underneath the shock? Did you see some
For me,
inequity?
I didn't when it happened. And to be honest, when it happened, when the whole thing, I mean, JBH, I was young, so I mean, and I'd still say it now. It was a fantastic performance. And at the end, like a lot of us thought it was purposeful. So I'm always into pushing that envelope. What's wrong with a woman's breast, by the way? It gives life, it gives substance, and so there was nothing there, but I had no idea she was banned. I didn't get that. I didn't get that memo. So, when after it happened, I didn't realize how damaging it was to her career. And she was basically shunned for several years.
Did she talk about that in the documentary?
She sure does. Yeah, she sure does.
Is she in a healthy, happy place now?
I think so. She has a baby boy. She was finally able to have a child. So I think so. I don't know. You'll have to call her up and ask her, but I got that feeling.
And I'll have to, yeah. And if she breastfed.
Right. That I don't know. Right.
Wow. So do I dare ask? Yes, I do. 3 and 4.
Pardon?
3 and 4. Who else are you listening to?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So, I forgot. I completely forgot where we were at. So music. I'll listen. Well, okay. So this is music. It's not traditional, but I'm a Tibetan sound bowl player. And I learned when my mother was passing in the hospital. I've done one of my outreaches for after I had traveled with cancer and was cured and basically had all my everything was a clean bill of health. I worked with people who helped me in my own healing journey, and we would go to the local community center and give free evenings with women who were experiencing cancer or were caregivers. And one of my friends plays, it's an art, the Tibetan healing bowls. And it was a great comfort for my mother. And I used to I played them for her every day in the hospital. And when she had passed, I never thought so. But I was called to become a player myself. And so I will do that in sound meditations. And so that's 3. That's 3. I find a lot of healing from that and a lot of grounding. And
how about 4? How do you top that with 4?
4, you know what? I'm going to give a shout out to the Rolling Stones. So I'm a big, I love the Stones. Oh, well, wait. I gotta stop. Wait. So I'm gonna have to already mention Keith Richards. So I mean, I listened to Tattoo You's one of my favorite albums, but I'm gonna throw out Prince as well, because my goodness, my husband's a musician, and we had the opportunity.
Does he have an instrument, or does he play
the singer? He's a singer. But for anyone,
his instrument.
Yeah. I also too is kind of like Prince. I never, I didn't know until I went. My mom worked in Cablevision and was often gifted tickets a lot. And she had tickets to Prince, and my husband and I went at Madison Square Garden, amazing seats, 2nd row. And we both stood there with our jaws like this. It was unbelievable. The talent in that human being.
You were like this, right? You were like this.
I was, but I was also like
transfixed.
I've never seen so much talent in my life. I didn't know. Of course, I mean, his albums are incredible, but like when you see someone live, as you know, I mean, it was powerful. And then we went the next night, went and got tickets and went again. So I feel blessed that I got to see him live. And yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have him at dinner too, wouldn't it?
You want him at dinner as well. when we do the garden party, right?
Yeah.
We wanted him to live long enough so that he could create more symphony for us, because his music was Virgin Symphony, wasn't it?
I've never, he picked up every single instrument. He was one of the best guitar players I've ever seen. Most people don't realize, but I mean, he was a master.
You ever listen to Morris Day as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Incredible.
Oh, wow. Okay. Listen, girl, you are so fun to learn. My goodness. You talked a little bit earlier about Isabel. We're going 3 for 4 books that you recommend to our family to read, and why. These books must be read.
Okay. Why? Okay. So number 1 is Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cast. If you haven't read it, you have to read it. I think it should be mandated in 9th grade. Everyone reads it. She lays it out unlike anything I've ever seen. Just an incredible piece of work. She breaks down how this world, how our system, how the construct was created on caste, and that no matter how hard you try, unless you were part of that upper caste level, the system is created so you won't get there. And it's quite prevalent. We know this in India, and she talks about it throughout the world, but brings it back to where we are in the United States. She takes it, of course, it involves racism and how, colonization of the states brought that upon and everything. But I think even for those of you listening out there who are maybe white listeners and thinking, not understanding it, I urge you to read it. The people that are in the government and the people that are running the businesses, there's a few that get up there. And the woman in front of me is right here who's gotten her $1 billion business, but the system is created for all of us to stay in our place. Have you read it?
Wow, I have not, but I will.
Okay.
I will.
So as much as I could try, there's only going to be a certain level that I will ever reach. And the construct is made that way. So I'm reading right now, and I have the opportunity to interview him in a couple of weeks, is Conversations with God. And I read this in my 20s when it first came out, and actually found it again. It's by Neil Donald Walsh, and it's a channeling of a conversation he had with Source. And I believe that we all have that within us. And it's a whole, again, it's another conversation, but I'm a deeply spiritual person. We've talked about energy, and I think we're all connected. There's a reason for us all here, and I do believe that it's to help one another. And he goes into it. So third is What a Fish Knows.
What a great name.
Right. And this is by, Jonathan Balcombe. And fishes are sentient beings. So that means that they can feel. And this book really changed my life. I'm a vegetarian, and I would occasionally have fish. And I'm not saying don't, this is going to stop you from it. But what I think is important in this is that it brings back that we're all connected, not to just one another, but to nature. And that this entire world, we are way out of balance right now, and we need to bring it back into balance. In the beginning of this world to where we're at now, to present day, if you put it in a calendar year, humans represent 15 minutes. We're at 11:45 p.m. on December 31st. So we're 15 minutes of this whole, being. And look what we've done in 15 minutes, right? And I think it's what this book brought to me. I've always known it, but it's really brought to me that we need to we need to understand that we're connected with nature as well, and to respect that. And I'm not saying that you can't have a steak on your plate, but the fact that it's all taken care of in this way, and that none of us really know how it happens and how the, how that meat gets to our plate is a big problem, and it causes overuse, overconsumption, and et cetera. So I think it's just having a mutual respect. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And then I mean, oh gosh, I should probably say my own book, right? But I don't. my friend, her name's Sandra. She's a colleague, Sandra Goldmark. She wrote a book called Fixation, and that was also I recently read it. She wrote it about last year. I interviewed her on Be the Change, and it's about fixing things. And I think that goes to a lot, that instead of throwing out those boots that may have a hole in it, to go get them fixed. The TV, if it breaks, or the vacuum or the toaster, to not just live in this disposable society, but to start fixing things. Yeah.
Wow. I remember
that's how we're going to get out of this.
I remember growing up, and you fixed everything, and you
Everything.
recycled, and you passed it forward. But nobody really had a lot of trash. What 4 pieces of advice have you been given in life, and by whom, that you can share with our family? Great advice, greatest advice you've been given. By whom, and why are you sharing?
Okay. Interesting. So 2 immediately come to mind. One was, it is not the idea, but it's the execution. Okay. And so that was profound for me in my business. And that came from was random, not someone I know, from watching The Real Housewives. Remember Bethenny Frankel? Do you remember that Real Housewives of New York?
Is because she didn't she build
was it margarita?
I don't know how big her business was.
I don't know either.
She built a business on a drink.
Yeah. I mean, and this is not a show that
she also took aid to Puerto Rico during
Did she?
Storm.
Good for her. Good for her.
Yeah, that's what I know. I haven't seen her show, but I've seen her work in the community.
Okay. So that was, she didn't necessarily give it to me, but I had heard her say that. And I learned that lesson very much so for those entrepreneurs out there. When I started the Good Home Company, again, I was the only person who is doing this. And it was, it was an incredible idea, but guess what? It's not the idea, it's the execution. And it wasn't executed properly. And, I did what I did, and I don't regret it. I learned so much from it. And I also believe that everything has its own reason, and had it went a certain way, I certainly probably wouldn't be where I am right now. So I'm fine with that. But for those of us who are doing that, I always think about it now. When you have an idea, anyone can take that idea, and trust me, they will, and they'll turn it into something else. It's how it's executed. So work on that plan. 2, I went to, this is also business. And I know you have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, a gentleman by the name of Vern Harnish. And he was the leader of a program at MIT, at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It was called Birthing of Giants. It was with Inc. magazine. And it was all you're accepted into. It was a 3-year program. And it was kind of an accelerator program for entrepreneurs. And he said to me, when selling your business, get the money up front. And that, so we'll just leave it at that. So
that may be for anything, right?
Yeah. But oftentimes they'll negotiate when selling. I don't know. Do you still have your business, JBH?
Yes, I do. Yes,
okay.
I do.
Okay. So, when you're going into mergers, when you're selling it and you're going about that, oftentimes there will be a payout over time, over years, if it reaches a certain threshold, et cetera. They like to plan it that way. If you're going to sell your business, get the money up front. The one thing, and I don't know who, no one necessarily said it, but I read it, and it's something that I believe wholeheartedly, is to always wake up and how you can help others. That it isn't about me, and it's about my participation in community and how I can help others. And that is how you come to joy. Everyone's talking about how to find happiness and how to find joy. And I found that truly, I found joy by helping others. So, don't treat others as you want them to, the saying that, treat others as you would want to be treated. It's treat others how they want to be treated.
Wow.
Right. And I read that the other day, and
wow.
Yeah. And so, I'll leave it.
So engaging of other people's feelings and needs. That's very engaging.
Yeah.
Wow. You gave us, you just slipped that 4 for 4 in there with the biggest punch. That's incredible. That's incredible. I love, you know what? I love leaving this conversation thinking on that. Christine, thank you so much. From my heart to your home, I am filled with gratitude, and this has been an awesome, awesome conversation. We got to do part 2.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for being the change.
Thank you. Thank you so much.